Hello everybody, thank you so much for stopping by. I am ChitChad and welcome to the very first installment of Thursday Art Day. So I don't know about you, but I'm actually really excited for the new Super Mario Odyssey game. Everything from like the gameplay to the visual aesthetic between all the different worlds, it just looks like a lot of fun. Not only that, but his new sidekick character, Cappy, is such a fun idea. Giving his hat an actual personality is something I definitely wanted to draw. So for today, we're going to be drawing Super Mario and his sidekick, Cappy, from Super Mario Odyssey. This is going to be a start to finish piece, which means we're going to do the sketching, to the line work, to the final composition, colors, and shading. So with all that out of the way, let's go! Alright, so first things first, we gotta sketch everything out, and like most things, I start off with really basic shapes, and right now I'm just kind of drawing some loose concepts as to what I want this pose to be. I had to think about it for a little bit, because I wanted him to do something with the hat. I didn't want him to just wear it. And I noticed on some of the promotional art pieces, he's throwing it, which is kind of like his signature move. And so I thought that would be the best pose to go with, is him just throwing the hat. That way I can give not only Mario a bit of personality, but I can also give the hat Cappy a bit of personality as well. I'm really excited for this game. I've been playing Mario games for probably about as long as I've been playing Sonic games, even though Sonic came first in my platforming genre of choice. I do like a lot of the Mario games. I didn't get super into no pun intended. I didn't get super into Mario until about Mario 64. I played that game more times than I can count. I still love it to this day. I really enjoy playing the DS version that they made of it because you can swap between all the characters. I'm a Luigi guy. Luigi has always been my favorite, and I don't even have an older brother. I like Luigi. I don't know, for some reason his personality just speaks a lot more to me. But as far as Super Mario Odyssey, I am really looking forward to it, like I said earlier, just because of the aesthetics. It looks like each level has its own visual style, and it's actually kind of interesting because the New Donk City kind of looks like Station Square from Sonic Adventure, and I know a lot of people, including myself, really didn't like the aesthetic of realistic people in the Mario or in the Sonic universe. It just looked really funky, but somehow with the Mario game, Super Mario Odyssey, it kind of works because at least I know that each level's supposed to be a bit different, as far as it almost as if he's jumping between universes altogether. So every place he goes to is completely different aesthetically, which I thought was really cool. One of the things that I changed from the sketch phase to the final phase, and you'll kind of see it as I go, I increased the size of Cappy because I realized, you know, when he's throwing it, it would be a lot farther ahead of him. And right now it just kind of looks like it's just floating by his butt there. So that's one of the things I did end up changing. And so now that we're done with the sketch, we're moving on to the line work, which a lot of people like to use illustrators to do vector lines. I am an animator by trade, so I use Flash, which is now called Animate. And this is probably something I'm going to say every single time that I jump into anime. I'm going to call it Flash because I'm a bit of an old school guy when it comes to, you know, animating in this program. So I will probably end up referring to it as Flash. So please don't like hate me or correct me, because I know it's called Animate, but it's really confusing to call it Adobe Animate because I also work in a program called Adobe Character Animator. So between Adobe Character Animator and Animate, and saying that you're an animator and that you like to do animations, it's just using the word way too much. It's almost obnoxious. So I will probably continue to call it Flash. And as far as, you know, working between Illustrator and Flash, I really don't see a huge difference. I just work a lot faster inside of Flash. And the main reason that I like to do vector lines is just because it gives it such a clean look that I feel that you just don't get doing it anyway else. And I feel like I have a lot more control over my line weights, which will go back in and actually manually kind of draw all the line weights on there. I know you can get that with just being, you know, really precise with your drawing inside of Photoshop or, you know, whatever drawing tool that you like to use. But for me, I like working with vectors a lot. And again, it's probably just because I'm so used to it being an animator and animating inside of Flash for, oh boy, probably about 10 years now, probably even longer. Gosh, it's a program I'm just really familiar with, and I draw pretty quickly, or at least I do line work pretty quickly inside of it. Drawing is still difficult for me inside of Flash, and it's because the drawing tools weren't always the greatest. It just felt really smudgy, but they've definitely improved a lot. But I tell you what, I press Control Z like it's a thing to do, especially when you're trying to get that nice either curved or straight line, and you're just constantly like, nope, nope, nope. Okay, got it this time. Great. So yeah, I enjoy the program, and it's definitely my go-to when doing this kind of line work. And then, like I said earlier, once we finish all the line work inside of Flash, I'm going to do the base colors, or what we refer to as flats, inside of Flash as well. And then I'll take all of those layers and export them out separately, and then we'll bring them inside of Photoshop and then layer them all back up. Alright, so now that we've got kind of the clean line work out of the way, now we're going to start doing the line weights, and I'll be doing a couple of the fills while I'm at it. Just the stuff that I know is going to be solid black. It might change and get a little bit of variance later, but for now, the things that I know is just going to be a solid color. I'm just going to go ahead and fill in while I'm doing this process. I think this is probably like the second or third time I've actually drawn Mario as like a finished piece. Like I said earlier, I was kind of like a Luigi person, so I would draw Luigi more than I would draw Mario. And then if it wasn't Luigi, it was Yoshi, because I also really liked Yoshi's story, and I'm pretty sure I'm one of the very few that would say that, because I feel like a lot of people don't like Yoshi's story, but I actually really love that game. And I think it was more of the design of it. I thought that pop-up storybook style just worked really well for it. And it's nice to see they kind of carried over that design sense with Yoshi in all of his adventures. It's like Yoshi's Woolly World, I think it was called. That's a game I really wanted to play. I just haven't yet. And then, what was it? Kirby's like Epic Yarn, I think. And then they did one where he was he like claymation style, I think? I can't remember what the name of it was, but Kirby's another series that I never really gotten to play. I think the only one that I really got into was, what was it, Crystal Shards on the Nintendo 64. Just the Nintendo 64 in general was like my go-to console for a really long time. If I wasn't playing, Sega Genesis or Sega Dreamcast, I was playing Nintendo 64. Just because, what was it, after Nintendo 64, then we had GameCube, and it felt like consoles lasted us so much longer back in the day. I felt like it was, like 4 or 5, sometimes even longer years before we jumped into the next console. Now I feel like Nintendo's pumping out a new console like every month. It's like we've got 10 different versions of the DS. It's, what is it, like the original DS, which was like this giant gray block, and then we had the DS Lite, and then a DS XL, and then the 3DS, and then the 3DS Lite, and then it was like the 2DS Lite, and then it was the 3DS XL, and I was just like, Nintendo, please stop. You're making things so confusing. And I've yet to actually play a Nintendo Switch. Like, I haven't even seen one in person yet. If I had all the time in the world, I would definitely be jumping into Zelda Breath of the Wild, because that game looks fantastic. I know you can get it on the Wii U, which I do have. So that's probably something I will eventually jump into when I have a bit more spare time, which is in limited supply as of late, because like I said in my update video, I am back in the YouTube game, and I am going to be uploading and making new content as quickly as I can, while still, maintaining my sense of standards, as it were. And I just have to say that, again, I really appreciate everybody that reached out and was super, supportive during the break. I really appreciate it, and I'm really glad to be back, and I'm definitely glad to be drawing again. It's one of those things where when you spend so much time away from doing something you love, you almost forget how much you loved it in the first place. And that's definitely what drawing and animating is for me. It was one of those things where I felt like I needed to take a break from it, but when I came back, it was just like, it's like getting on the bike and you forgot just how much you loved riding the bike to begin with. So that's definitely what's happened here. And there's still the times where I've gotten frustrated because my skill set, even now isn't as strong as it used to be as far as illustrating and doodling, which is a bit frustrating. But I know as long as I keep at it, and you could say this for most things, as long as you keep at it, and you'll just continue to improve. The hardest part is doing it. Like, you just have to keep working at it and eventually you'll just get better. So I still feel like I'm a little bit rusty, and there are things that I would like to go back and change on a lot of the pieces that I've already recorded for the channel, but it's one of those things where I need to force myself to always look forward and just keep working on the next thing instead of always looking back and be like, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. But I just need to be happy with what I do produce and like that I'm making progress, if that makes sense. So I know this is kind of like a little bit of like reflective talk for drawing a Mario piece. I know that might seem kind of silly, but it's definitely something I've been thinking about, probably because I've just taken such a long break, you know, from making content. So now we are moving on to the flat color phase, which I pulled a picture, I think from just one of the Nintendo websites or promotional sites, and just so I could start picking out the colors for Mario and Cappy, which I love that he has pink eyes. I think that's adorable. I just love the character in general, and I don't know if he talks or if he just makes noises. That seems to be something in a lot of Nintendo games. It's either like grunts, you know, or it's full-on voice acting. It doesn't feel like there's ever an in-between. I remember when I played Star Fox 64 for the first time, and literally my jaw hit the floor when I heard them talk. I was like, that's a thing? Like, that's a thing that we have the technology to make characters talk in a video game? Because, you know, it's not like Sonic didn't talk until Sonic Adventure, you know, so it's not like I was exposed to characters that would talk up until Nintendo 64, I think was the first time. Because, I didn't really have any of like the hardcore games, you know, like GoldenEye or stuff like that. So hearing dialogue was like a shock. And I think Star Fox 64 was the first Nintendo 64 game I had, because I think it came bundled with it, and I got it for Christmas. So I'm pretty sure, yeah, that had to have been the first time I ever heard dialogue come out of a video game. It like shocked me. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of like the newer Star Fox games, Star Fox Zero, but as far as like that game, Falco is like my guy. I love Falco so much. I always end up liking the side characters more than I like the main characters. Like even when Knuckles first appeared in Sonic, I'm like, that's my guy. Knuckles is like the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I remember like reading up in the manuals, because that's how you got story back in the day. It wasn't from the actual game, it was from like the manuals, and there was a background on Knuckles, and he's like, he likes grapes, I like grapes, I connect with this guy. And I think that's the one problem I've always had with Mario, is like, he's such a lovable character, but he doesn't have much of a story to really connect with. And he's one of those characters I don't think he even needs one. But with Luigi, I think the reason I connect with him so much is because he has, in my honest, I don't want to make anyone upset by saying this, I just feel like Luigi has a bit more personality, especially when you play games like Luigi's Mansion. Like, his personality just kind of shines through in those kind of games, because he's more of a character actor than anyone else in the Mario like franchise. Just his movements and the way that he emotes just breathes so much character. Where Mario's just like, he's a happy guy for the most part, you know? He's just that go get him type guy. And speaking of Mario games, I probably should be like talk about Mario more, seeing as I'm drawing Mario. Trying to think, favorite Mario game so far. And I feel like I might also be alone in saying this. I actually really, really like Super Mario Sunshine. I play that game at least once every 2 years or so, all the way through, because it's actually not a terrible like time commitment to just play that game all the way through if you're not trying to get all like the shines. But I am hoping that this Mario Odyssey game kind of like reminds me of that a little bit. I played the Super Mario Galaxy games just a little bit, but I didn't get into them as much as I got into Sunshine. It might just be because I was into the GameCube so much and I enjoyed that console so much, because I could also say that like Wind Waker was probably my favorite Legend of Zelda game and the only one I played all the way through. So now we're going back and, well, not going back, but we're adding some rough highlights. I'm gonna kind of brush these in a bit more once we push everything into Photoshop. But I always like to start with, you know, I don't want to call them like harsh, but I would say we can use the word heavy shadows and highlights. because right now it almost looks like he's kind of like made out of plastic, or he's smudged Vaseline all over himself, so it's not a good look for Mario. So we'll punch those in once we go into Photoshop and, you know, soften them up where they need to be softened. But I always like to start with, you know, the hard shadows and highlights, just so I have that option, and it'll allow me to kind of do more with like the stacking order of the layers. And if I need to bring back the shadows, if I push them too far, or if the highlights start to fade away, or if they get too bright, I feel like I have a lot more control if I just do it this way. So you'll start seeing, and it'll make a little bit more sense once we jump and push everything into Photoshop, which is where this piece will be, you know, finally coming together as a final composition. And it's been a long time since I've done a video like this, so if you all have any feedback, please let me know. I would love to hear it. And if there are characters that you want to see me draw in the future, also please let me know by using the comments down below. So this is something that I definitely want to make a habit. Like I said in my update video, we're going to be doing Thursdays art days, and sometimes it's going to be doing art like this, where we take something from like a doodle to a final piece, or it might be some animation, or you know, I'm trying to think of some other ideas. So also, if you guys have any like fun ideas that we could do for kind of artsy days, just again, let me know. I definitely like the idea of keeping things kind of open, like, so it'll be you know, categorized in the art kind of like field, but as far as, you know, what we do art wise, I'm still relatively open for. I've recorded a couple of speed paints so far, and I have no problem with kind of like mixing in other things, you know, in between those, because I do have some animated pieces coming out relatively soon. I don't want to like make any promises because I'm still working on them. One of them's a story, kind of like a story time animation, and then the other one is my animated series, which I don't want to talk too much about until it gets closer, because I almost don't want to, like, you know, jinx it. Not that it's not going to get done, I don't know, I don't want to talk too much about it until it's finished, because then I'll be like, there it is, I made it, I'll be so happy. In fact, you might see two of those characters, or the two main characters from my animated series, in the background on my desk in this video. Oh, it's an Easter egg, but no one knows who they are, so not really. So we're getting pretty close to the final here, just adding a little bit more touch-ups. One of the things I always like to focus a lot on is the eyes. I feel like if the eyes pop, the rest of the piece is gonna pop. So if you're trying to make your character like recognizable, or, you know, give them some personality, or really give the audience something to kind of hook onto, it's definitely the eyes is like the main focus you want to go for. That's why you'll see a lot of animations, especially on the normal like television, whether it's Simpsons or Family Guy. You'll always notice they have very large round eyes, and that's just because like the eyes are the window to the soul. So spending time with the eyes is really important. And I know back in the day I was notorious, and I think a lot of artists that, especially that were inspired by like anime, I was one of those kids for a while. DBZ was my jam, so I was really inspired by anime for quite a long time. But I feel like anime kind of leans you into avoiding drawing both eyes, so you'll always try to cover the other eye with like hair or something, and that's kind of like problematic. Sometimes it can look really, really cool and like dramatic, but other times it just kind of looks like you're just hiding an eye. So I've made it a point to try and always have both eyes visible no matter what, because it just gives you one extra window into the soul, and the more windows the better, right? So we are coming down to the finale. One of the things that I always like to do is I like to add noise to the image. So what I do is I create a new layer, and I use a really soft version of whatever the background color is. So if it's a deep yellow, I'll use a really light yellow, and then I will add a noise layer on top. And then, well, it's not a noise layer. Basically, you set it to dissolve, and you pull it back on the opacity, and then I combine it with another layer so that it's merged, and that way the dissolve is no longer an effect, it's actually the layer. So what it does is it kind of breaks up the colors a little bit, and it makes it look a bit more organic, and it kind of brings an interesting texture to the piece, and I really like doing that. One of the things I used to do a lot was just add crazy amounts of textures, but I kind of gotten away from that recently for more of a cartoony approach, because again, I'm an animator and a bit of a cartoonist, so I kind of like doing more of just really bright, vivid colors instead. So we're adding the final details, some highlights just to kind of make the rest of the image pop. We add some adjustment layers to kind of adjust the saturation and the vibrancy and the levels to the piece, which I always do kind of last, which is kind of good practice, because if you have those on and you start adjusting layers underneath, it can kind of mess things up if you decide to alter those adjustments later. So I always try to save that for last and then turn them off if I'm going to go and adjust it some more. We added a drop shadow to the characters, kind of make them pop from the background a little bit, and going back in, just adding some final highlights to finish this piece up. And that is the final Super Mario Odyssey piece with Super Mario and his new ghost hat sidekick character, Cappy. This was a lot of fun to do. It's been a while since I've been able to just draw something from start to finish like this, so I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did as well. If you like this content and you want to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button. If there's something you'd like to see me draw in the future, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I hope you all are having an amazing day, and as always, I will chat with you later.